to start this morning talking about how to increase your profitability and your environmental compliance with chip and fluid management solutions. I'm Mike Hill, Vice President of Sales and Marketing for Prab in Kalamazoo, Michigan. There have been a lot of technological advances in all industries, and in our industry in particular, we're seeing a move from central manufacturing systems to more cellular and modular manufacturing. We're also seeing a big move towards dry machining, or MQL, minimal quantity lubricants. Even in the casting industry, we're seeing near net shape and forging technologies that are becoming very prevalent. And one of the biggest that we're seeing is much more high pressure coolant and through the tool coolant, and that is causing some real need for high clarity fluids. Even vertical access machining centers with expanded tool holders and automated pallet systems is becoming very prevalent. And how many here have worked with some new alloys like the compacted graphite iron? That's becoming very, very popular, and we're seeing that more and more all the time. How many people are still doing things the old-fashioned way? We've got this shot here. We call these guys Sven and Ali. They came over from the old country. And it's kind of humorous to see that, but in all honesty, we see this each and every week as we travel throughout the world, and even in our country here in the United States. This is the way a lot of people handle their scrap. You can imagine how many issues are involved with the people that are handling it this way, from a health and safety issue, the backs, cutting their hands, and just even the motivational aspect of having to deal with this type of product each and every day for those individuals involved. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the benefits of chip processing this morning. One of the major things we want to talk about is the value of your scrap and how we can increase that scrap value for you. That can be done in a variety of ways. We'll talk about it in a few minutes in more detail. But if we can remove fluids from your scrap, you now have, instead of a hazardous material and a waste stream, you now have a valuable commodity as a byproduct of your manufacturing operations. We can also increase productivity with chip processing, and we can reduce storage and transportation costs. Picture, if you will, if you're dealing with a lot of aluminum product and you start filling your scrap containers with aluminum and they're bushy, stringy turnings, you're typically going to fill those containers by volume, not by weight. So you're having multiple trips of your scrap dealer picking up those containers on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, whatever they are. If we can reduce those turnings, then you start filling your containers now by weight, not by volume, and that minimizes the amount of travel trips that the scrap dealer has to deal with, and therefore you can save transportation costs and realize more profit from that scrap. There's compliance issue, work safety issue, risk avoidance issue with ISO 14000. Everybody has their own issues, and we're going to talk about why those issues are very important here in just a couple seconds. But there are several benefits of chip processing, and we're going to discuss those here. Some sample chip management and processing technologies are crushers. These crushers can take these bushy, stringy wads, and we've got a video coming up here in just a second to show you exactly what we mean by that, and reduce those down to what we refer to as shovel grade chips. These are chips that can be handled much more easily, that you can reduce volume as you put them into containers, whether it's a Gaylord or whether it's a whole scrap container. Ringers can use centrifugal force, up to 700 Gs of centrifugal force, to drive out the moisture in your chips, giving you now a dry byproduct, not a wet, contaminated byproduct, which again adds value to that metal byproduct that you're producing. Briquetting is another way that we can remove moisture from your chip streams. And in addition to removing the moisture, and we can get down to less than 2% moisture by weight with both of these processes, the ringers and the briquetters, we can also turn your chips into a near solid product, which is very, very valuable for introducing into the remelt furnaces directly. And you have to remove that water to minimize that explosive tendency. Not a good scenario. There literally have been people that have lost their lives because of too much moisture in the waste stream being introduced into the furnaces. We prefer that not to happen. Swarf presses. The term swarf is a little bit unique also. Depending on what part of the world you're at, swarf can mean anything from what we in the United States would call standard, excellent looking chips to grinding sludge. We typically talk about swarf as grinding swarf, grinding sludge here in this country, but in Europe, swarf means many, many things. So you got to be really careful when you start talking terminology with just swarf. The swarf presses can take that grinding sludge and remove the bulk of that water, allowing you to as a pre-process way to handle that. And then you can also take that into a briquetter, turn that grinding sludge into a solid if that's your choice of methodology. And then a lot of mechanical and pneumatic conveying. This is a video of a self-dumping hopper, and you're going to see a bunch of bushy wads, stringies, and coolant that will be dumped into our VAC. That vertical access rusher will reduce these to shovel grade chips. Those chips are then taken right to a wringer or briquetter. This is an example of a briquetter. Again, into a near solid that can be entered right into the remelt furnaces themselves. We want to talk a little bit now about the fluid management benefits. Fluid management is becoming much more prevalent and popular throughout the world, mostly because the cost of your coolants are going up. It's just a fact of life. We see every month it seems like they go up. We can recover those expensive fluids, recondition them, reintroduce them back into your system, and allow you to save up to 90% of your fluid purchases. Also reduces your Holloway cost. A couple of reasons for this. If you have contaminated scrap with coolant, whether it's oil-based or water-based, typically it's considered a hazardous material and you get charged a premium for having that removed. If we can remove those fluids down to less than 2% by volume, as I said, then you have the opportunity of having it classified as a different material for Holloway and saving you considerable dollars. Increased production and productivity. Clean coolant can give you better surface finishes, improve tool life. That's just a fact of life. We can help that with a number of different pieces of material. We can do down to 1 micron clarity if that's what you choose. To put that in perspective, typically new coolant coming into your facility is probably in a 10 to 12 to 15% micron clarity rating. We can reduce that down to 1 micron if that's your choice, if you're using it through the tooling high pressure coolant. We can do that through fluid paper bed filters, magnetic filters for removing the solids, the ferrous solids. Centrifuges, if you have, again, this grinding sludge or a very high particulate content fluid, you can use a centrifugal centrifuge to remove that high particulate into the, or out of the fluid, excuse me. Skimmers, tramp oil separators, just removing the oils from your coolant will also help clarify that coolant, make it more valuable, allow you to re-energize it and reintroduce it back into your system. This is an example of a permanent media vacuum type filter. This is an example of this fine grinding swarf. We're going to see that back flushed off this material. And then that grinding swarf can be removed. From with a drag out conveyor or some other means from the bottom of your sump. I talked earlier about identifying what you're really trying to accomplish. What are your challenges? Are you trying to reduce the volume of your chips? Are you working with a lot of aluminum? You have a lot of bushies. You need to get it down to a more manageable size. Maybe you're working with exotic materials and you want to reduce those down in size so that you can store them and kind of play the market a little bit and maybe wait for the price to improve for you to sell them to your scrap dealer. Or are you trying to just remove fluids and reduce your fluid cost and reintroduce those back in your system? These challenges are what we really try to identify you, Mr. Customer, what you're looking to do so that we can properly apply the proper piece of equipment to meet that need. And then there are the benefits that are realized from that proper choice and proper application of equipment. Return on investment, fluid recycling example. This is a true example of a automotive manufacturer on the East Coast, and we'll show some real numbers here. If you can eliminate downtime for cleaning your sumps, they were eliminating about 6 hours weekly, and their fully burdened rate of staff to do that was $55 per hour. So that's $16,000 plus annually in a savings there. You can argue the rate, maybe your rate's $50, maybe it's $30, maybe it's $80, but it's still a true, real number. And also, by clarifying the fluids that this company was using, they reduced their tool changes and improved their tooling life significantly, and they estimated about 5 hours weekly to do that. So there's another $13,750 annually. And these are based on 50-week years. By increasing productivity, if you can put out more piece parts with those 11 hours now that you have, again, depending on what your costs are, it'll be different. This company, their price for their piece part was $5. They did about 20 pieces per hour, so that's $100 more per hour times the 11 hours more per week times your 50 weeks a year. That's $55,000 of increased productivity. Again, that's a real number. If yours is half of that, that's still a very real number. Again, we touched a little bit on Holloway cost. This is some real numbers that this company found and shared with us. They found that they were able to reduce their purchasing of their coolant concentrate by 10 gallons a week. They were paying $15 per gallon, average of over $7,000 annual savings. They also found that they were having 600 gallons monthly reduction in their Holloway cost, paying just under $1.80 per gallon, another $5,700 of reduction in cost for hauling away their spent coolant. By extending their tool life, the same company showed by removing their tramp oils and other contaminants, it increased their tool life somewhere between 25 and 209%. Now that's a pretty wide range. We certainly understand that. 25% is extremely conservative. We're an extremely conservative company. They said we're getting a 200+% increase in our tool life. We were a little uncomfortable to use just that figure. So based on 25% of their annual tooling cost of $125,000, that's another $31,250 annual savings. Again, a very real number. If we start adding all of these up, reduced tool time for cleaning, 16 grand. Reduction in tool changeover, 13,750. Part production increase, $55,000. Reduction in coolant purchases, $7,500. Reduced Holloway cost, $5,000 plus. And their perishable tool savings of over $31,000. This company realized almost $130,000 in annual savings in one cell in their facility. This makes a real ROI benefit for that company. That concludes my presentation. I appreciate everybody's attendance today. Thank you very much.